There comes a time in a man's life where he must concede and understand that he was wrong, where he talks about the old men and doesn't consider them to be the strongest in the series. And you know, that time is not today, because I do not concede. I'm gonna call Cole and be like, yo, King of Lightning, like you gotta change how you feel about things, because you were kind of wrong. Hey, now I'm playing. One Piece chapter 1081. I don't really know what to say exactly, other than Garp is him. He's him. Now, he's not the him of the past, clearly, which I've been saying, but he's still him. I do have some things to concede, but I'll get to that later. Let's try to go in a bit of an order of events. I was hoping Oda continued in Hachinosu. I was hoping we did not jump around, go to Egghead, even though Egghead is super hype. But Oda wrapped up so many things in this chapter, you guys have no idea. This chapter provided things you probably don't even understand yet, but I'll talk about it. I promise I'll get into it as soon as you get into that subscribe button, okay? Click that button, let me know you like the content, and let's go. So there's some things that we kind of jumped to conclusions about. One thing was Garp and his attack, the size of it. Now, Oda made sure to show us the scale of the attack. It looked exorbitant in the last chapter. In this chapter, it's a good attack, but the scale of it is not as crazy as we initially thought, okay? So he's still him, but in this chapter, he's like, yo, I'm not as strong as I used to be. He said, when did I get this weak? And they're like, yo, weak? What do you mean? Does that mean in your prime you could? It's crazy. Groose is slowly becoming one of my favorite characters in Sword, which is a weird thing to have. But him and how he handled the ship landing, how easy it was, his manipulation of the clay is pretty damn good. Is he actually a Logia? They insinuated it, but it feels like a Paramecia. But like, if he's actually a Logia, he could really be the, you know, the Sengoku to Kobe's Garp, because there's a rivalry brewing there. It could be that, or it could be Naruto and Kiba. We don't know yet. But Garp, he shows up, he says he's lost his touch. He's not the same guy. As I've been saying, Garp has referenced it before, and Oda is throwing it in our face again. He is not the same guy, but he is still very, very powerful. Top 3 all time in his prime. And right now, it'll be hard pressed not to find someone that has him in their top 15. Like, just insane. Again, with Groose, I like the fact that he mentioned he was bothered with Garp calling him the future of the Marines, because Groose seems to be older, has a devil fruit, which is not in the vein of Garp. So I can understand where it's some, you know, it's a bit touchy. The rivalry, I see them going forward with Miss Whip Whip and Groose and Kobe being the new generation of the monster trio. That's not what we call them. Garp, Sengoku, and Suda is not the monster trio. They're just a trio that grew together, and it being her granddaughter, it makes so much more sense what Oda's setting up. I cannot wait for Two Piece. Two Piece is gonna hit. It's gonna smack. They're gonna be the main players of it. The main Marines that's running the show at that time, I think. Almost like me confirming or knowing for a fact Two Piece is gonna happen. So that being highlighted, it kind of accentuates exactly what Oda's trying to convey in this chapter, which is it's a new era. And I know people don't like the sound of that, but that's what Oda has been pushing the majority of the time skip. And even with Garp, as powerful as he is, he can't escape Father Time. So I'm not saying he's slow and old, right? But he's in a bad situation. I'll explain why. First, let's talk about Kuzan. How he's taking whatever Akainu did to him very personally, because going after Hibari after there were rumors out there about Hibari being Akainu's relative, Akainu's daughter. So that seems a bit premeditated. Very, very cold of you, Aokiji. However, he takes her out. This leads to some of the best moments ever in One Piece, and I'll explain why. First, Oda sets up the stakes. Aokiji cannot let Kobe get away because it looks bad on him. Aokiji cannot let Kobe leave while Blackbeard isn't there, because he's still trying to build the trust that Blackbeard has in him, because Blackbeard doesn't trust him, considering that he's a former admiral. Now, how the recruitment went in our minds is not how it played out at all in the story. It is somewhat happenstance, but it still feels a bit premeditated, right? And I want you guys to think of this and remember this, right? Aokiji and Smoker's conversation in Punk Hazard. No matter how much doubt you're feeling right now about Kuzan, he's still him, okay? And I think that was a precursor and somewhat reminding Smoker that, yo, no matter what you hear about me, what you see, and even with Doflamingo talking to Kuzan about, hey, your eyes, it doesn't feel, they don't look defeated. There's still some purpose there, right? He's still him. Just remember that throughout this review, remember that he's still him. Not in the same way that Garp is him, but he's still himself. And that could be a very interesting connection there, but I digress. Vasco shot, at this point, we have to really worry about his well-being because every single time there's the confrontation, he's getting one-shotted. I don't know, but Aokiji, he's in a bar, right? And Blackbeard runs in like, yo, what did you do to my guys, man? And it seems like Blackbeard just ran into Aokiji, which I find that hard to believe. However, this chapter, it's creating doubt, like I said, about Kuzan, because it makes it seem like Blackbeard somewhat convinced Kuzan to follow his own dreams. It was like a weird spin on something Luffy would do, where it's like, yo, being a pirate doesn't just mean following me and about my dreams. A pirate is basically us sailing together while having our own agendas. And for Kuzan, something struck. And Oda even given like the simple dialogue box where it's like Blackbeard reaffirming his dream. I'm like, yo, did he really join the Blackbeard Pirates? It's scary. It's really scary, but Blackbeard knowing and saying, yo, there's only one person in the world that could have done something like this. Like, he's a powerhouse, right? Those moments with Kuzan and Blackbeard just chopping it up, just laughing it up, mucking it up. I'm like, okay, I have to remember he's still him. I have to remember that because Oda is selling it. Kuzan is not only convincing the Blackbeard Pirates, but he's convincing me. And I'm someone who always goes back. I look at that Smoker and Kuzan conversation. I'm like, yeah, there's no way. There's no way. But look at it, bro. It's actually crazy. Now, the man marked by flames. This is an interesting conversation because it started with us feeling like, okay, is it Sabo? Is it Aruj? And of course, Aokiji was thrown in. We started to believe it could be Saul. Now there's a man that sails in a black ship. If you get close, there are whirlpools that start just out of nowhere. Let me tell you what me and my friends came to. It's not Dragon Ship. We've seen Dragon Ship. It's not pitch black, and why would Dragon be doing that? The fact that it mentioned the Marines, it is a bit sketch. So is it like a ship that the Marines, remember we just met Black Horse and those guys a bunch of chapters ago, that new faction of the Marines? Would it be crazy if the Marines had a faction that went and got the poneglyph from Fishman Island? Because this isn't necessarily just someone taking a rubbing. They took the entire poneglyph, right? So this black ship could be technology from Vegapunk where whirlpools can start based on the technology, and they're carrying a poneglyph to make sure that someone cannot get the final poneglyph to find the One Piece. Prevention by taking one of the key pieces. However, for you to do this, right? This poneglyph was in Fishman Island. You had to lift this poneglyph from Fishman Island. There are not many people that could just randomly lift a poneglyph. One of these people is Shiki. Shiki can do that with his Devil Fruit abilities. So what about this guy being Shiki? Just holding the keys to the kingdom, kind of like what Whitebeard did for a while. It's scary because if it is Shiki, I would love it because Oda did somewhat promise us that Shiki will return in 20 years. It's around that time. What if Shiki is actually back, right? And he's the man marked by flames, but where did the flames come from? Did he get into a fight with the Kainu? I don't know. Here's what I'm hoping. I would like for this man marked by flames to be a new person because it introduces another top tier that could enter the fray and be a big player. Because we got two of our bigger players, 3 billion berry bounty guys, both got knocked out and confirmed in this chapter. And that hit me very deeply because that's Law. That's my guy. Quickly before we talk about those guys, Lafitte was very bold, bringing up Aokiji's power right in front of him. Aokiji can fold all of you. And at that point, I don't think he's beating Blackbeard. I don't know. I really don't know. But something interesting to point out is that for Blackbeard in this scene, he has 2 knots on his beard. Now, current timeline, he has 3 knots. Does this confirm that Blackbeard already has his 3rd Devil Fruit? I don't know. I don't know. Something to consider. The Garp versus Aokiji fight, though, I understand. A lot of people are like killing me in my comment section for my live reaction. I'll link that below because I haven't changed my opinion. I think Garp is really strong, but Aokiji is out of his bandwidth. It looks great. He looks phenomenal, right? And maybe we did downplay him a bit. However, I'm kind of heartbroken because it feels like a tragedy is coming. It feels like Oda is making Garp look good initially to break him down later. But how he continues to make Garp look good by having Garp saying, I'm not the same guy. He did the same for Whitebeard at the beginning of Marineford, beforehand saying, I'm not the same guy. Because we know from the SBS, Oda says, I like old guys. That sounds a bit weird, but he's saying, I like older or respect on older men, like the old legends. So they're always going to look good. Oda said, why do they have to decline, right? But he understands that no one can escape time. So he's always going to make them look good. However, narratively, it makes too much sense for Aokiji to win. If Garp comes in and he takes Kobe while Aokiji is there, it it reflects very badly in regards to his relationship with Blackbeard. Very badly. Thinking about Blackbeard's goal and what Aokiji's trying to accomplish, we still don't know. Kobe's gonna escape. If Aokiji manages to reel in Garp, the hero of the Marines, that gives Blackbeard so much leverage with the Marines, with the Navy, maybe even with Cross Guild, right? What if they enter into an alliance because they get the bounty of someone like Garp? And for Garp, I think he's learned from his mistakes, and that's why he's going into the fray as straight on as, I mean, that's Garp, right? But he learned from Ace, and now he's not going to let Kobe die. He'd rather sacrifice himself. And we can't forget, Shiryu is still here. I'm not saying Shiryu is Himothy, but I'm saying that he's in a bad situation. There's Groose, there's some other people there as well, but unfortunately, I think Garp loses here. Garp is strong, and I'll say it here that it's not like I underestimated him. I'm just saying that he's old. That's all I really said, but I still respected him by having him top 15. Now, does he move up? Is he top 5? No way. No way. He's not the same guy. But this fight is going to tell us that in regards to power scaling. But guys, this fight isn't even about power scaling. I think there's so much deeper in this fight in regards to the character interactions and the character moments, because based on what Garp is saying, right? He opened it up by saying to Aokiji, basically only weaklings lose their way. But he also said to get back in uniform. Not saying he necessarily has a one-track mind, but Garp has a way in which he feels like change can happen. And this change is through the Marines. For Aokiji, I think he's more motivated than ever because he's finally seeing the things he wants to do and doing that. But for Garp, he's like, you're a weakling. You're not a Marine anymore. You turned your back on the shield. For Aokiji, he's like, yeah, but what if now I have become the sword? Because Garp is in this middling place, not a sword, not a shield, but he is passive and actively changing the Marines from within. Sword is based off of Garp, but Garp isn't actively creating something like that. So Garp, sword is honestly what he's trying to accomplish. His entire life, Aokiji, Kobe, Groose, Helmeppo, those guys and how they look up to him, his influence is how he wants to live his life and show I can impact the world and impact the Marines by influencing the Marines, changing the culture in here. That's how I can make my mark. Not necessarily going and becoming a revolutionary and trying to take down the world government. But can you imagine how him and Dragon clashed? Because he has that one-track mind of change occurs within. But for Garp, you can't help but look around. Ace, Luffy, Sabo, now Aokiji, Dragon. They have different ways of doing things. Not saying it's necessarily wrong, but that's how they choose to live their life. Garp, but Dragon on the other hand, we found out Luffy was a pirate. He's like, a pirate? Well, that's okay too. Freedom. So he doesn't respect what Garp is doing because as free as Garp is, he is still restrained. This is just a beautiful tragedy waiting to happen. Aokiji said it. Can you save your favorite student from your first student? Can you, Garp? What are you willing to do? But in the midst of it, Garp says those who hesitate, they're weak. So I think Aokiji is still, honestly, still a bit hesitant about Garp. That's Garp. We understand based on the flashback how he feels about Garp. But for him to overcome Garp, there cannot be any hesitation. This reminds me about Luffy and Usopp, where, not saying it's the same gap in strength at all, but just how Luffy was hesitant, right? And Zoro said to him, if we can't believe in you, who do we look to? And for Aokiji, he's going to have to 100% become the heel. Dive deeper into the gray, because that's who you choose to be. It's sad, it's crazy, but I think it's inevitable. On Randy's stream I said that Aokiji was probably the best person to take down Garp. It makes a lot of sense for their relationship. And Aokiji somewhat getting rid of the stain of the Marines. I brought in the hero. Took down the hero. Don't look at me as a Marine any longer. I am the 10th Titanic captain. Kuzan. Guys, I'm sad. I'm not gonna lie, talking about this in this way, I'm sad because I think it's a very unfortunate situation that awaits Garp. He's the hero. She's gonna triumph by saving everyone else, but I think a conversation with Blackbeard has to happen. But we'll talk about that. Guys, subscribe, like, much more to come. I gotta go because I'm sad now.